Spoštovani udeleženci današnjega spletnega predavanja Pomen socialnih medijev pri predstavljanju zgodb in učinkov. Lepo vas pozdravljam s strani Movita, Zavoda za razvoj mobilnosti mladih in Nacionalne agencije evropskih programov Erasmus+, Mladi v akciji in Evropska solidarnostna enota, ki to predavanje organizira. Upam, da se slišimo, nekaj se nas je že nabralo, zelo smo veseli, da ste se na današnje spletno predavanje odzvali v takem številu. To nam namreč kaže, da smo naslovili aktualno temo, za katero dejansko obstaja tudi potreba v mladinskem sektorju in med našimi upravičenci. Včeraj smo na dogodku Predstavimo višje na raziskavah osnovano mladinsko delo govorili in predstavljali učinke naših programov, kot smo jih spoznali preko raziskav. Učinke prepoznavamo na različnih ravneh, prepoznava jih Nacionalna agencija, prepoznavate jih upravičenci. Definitivno z izvajanjem programa ustvarjamo učinke in ustvarjamo zgodbe, zgodbe pa je potrebno deliti. In pri tem deljenju danes je ključna vloga pri deljenju zgodb socialnih medijev, pa se pogosto pojavljajo izzivi. Izzivi se lahko pojavijo tako glede vsebin, glede načina, kanalov komuniciranja, doseganja in interakcije s ciljnimi publikami in tako naprej. Zato sem zelo vesela, da danes med nas vabim našega gosta in predavatelja, Craiga Dwyerja. Craig, hi, hello. I'm really happy to introduce you today as our lecturer.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi, so let me introduce you a little bit more. So Craig Dwyer is an internationally recognized expert in the field of strategic communication and social media. Craig Dwyer is an author of internationally recognized and awarded social media campaigns. It is a leading source behind the Association for a Change and a lecturer on the topics of public relations and strategic communication at Dublin City University. So indeed, we have with us expert in the field of strategic communication and the use of social media. We are really happy to listen to you, Craig, in next hour, and we want to encourage our participants to put questions, to ask questions as much as possible. You can put questions through the tool answer and question. It's a button on your Zoom, and I will be collecting questions. Craig will be answering them probably during, but for sure at the end of the lecture. I want to repeat this also in Slovenian language. Se pravi, vsi udeleženci, vsi slušatelji ste vljudno vabljeni, da postavljate vprašanja. Vprašanja postavljate lahko že med samim predavanjem z uporabo gumbka vprašanja odgovori, questions and answers. Jaz bom zbirala vprašanja in jih bom distribuirala Craigu, ki bo na njih odgovarjal, verjetno že med samim predavanjem, zagotovo pa na koncu. Vaša vprašanja so torej zelo zaželjena. Zdaj pa nas vse vabim, da prisluhnemo Craigu. Craig, again, happy to have you here, and the digital floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moisa. And thank you so much for the invitation to speak with you all today. I'm joining you here from Dublin in Ireland. The original plan was that I would be there with you guys, but unfortunately, coronavirus got in the way and ruined those plans. But regardless, I am happy to be here, virtually with you all today. So yeah, the topic of the conversation today is the role of social media for storytelling and impact. Just another quick note before we kick off as well. Obviously, I'm going to be delivering the session in English. As a person from Ireland, we tend to speak quite quickly. So I am going to try and really slow that down today. But if there are any issues with kind of like my speaking, please do let us know in the chat box as well. Okay. Just before we kick off then, I just to introduce a little bit more about myself. So previously I worked as the social media director for Yes Equality, and Yes Equality was the main campaigning organization behind the yes vote in the marriage equality referendum here in Ireland in 2015, when Ireland became the first country in the world to introduce marriage equality by a vote of the people. And the role that social media played in that campaign was very much seen as kind of new and innovative in a campaigning context. And certainly, in terms of storytelling and impact, it really came to the fore, and it really allowed us to reach, engage, and influence our target audiences right across the country. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Just after that, I went to work for News Talk, which is like a national radio station here in Ireland. I was their social media manager for a while. I then left to take up a fellowship with the Social Change Initiative, where I developed an online toolkit for nonprofits, youth organizations, campaigners on how to use social media for impact. And that's what I continue to work as today, as a consultant, as a freelancer with those types of organizations, including many youth organizations, on how to use and get the most out of social media as part of their important work. We'll skip that. So just what we will be discussing for the session, the agenda or the objectives. So first of all, I think it's important just to analyze our current performance. And what I mean by that is just to take the space and think about how are we currently doing? How are we using social media for our work? And are we using it for storytelling? Are we having impact? And being able to really step outside and take a look at that. Because often I find, we're very busy and we can get very caught up in the doing. And it can be useful just to take that time and actually take a step back and look and say, okay, well, are we using social media in the best way? And, if not, how can we build on that? So with that in mind, I will guide the rest of the session. And I'm a big advocate in kind of like planning, so no matter what we are doing, so if we're hosting an event or if we're going to be publishing results of research that we've done, pushing out information, when we're in the planning stages of that, I think it's useful at that stage to be thinking, okay, well, what do we want this to look like on social media? Rather than after the fact, then thinking back, oh, did we put something up on social media about this? And if that's the case, it tends to slip off a little bit. Whereas if you can bring it right into the planning, you tend to get a lot more out of it. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And also creating content, social media is so visual, and we need to be able to stand out on social media to engage those target audiences we're trying to reach. So we'll look at a tool to help us create some of that visual content as well. And I've kind of listed some frequently asked questions I get in relation to social media, but then as Moita mentioned as well, I will provide a couple of opportunities, one halfway through and one at the end, where we'll leave space for discussion and for a Q&A. So any questions you have throughout, please do pop them into the Q&A box on your Zoom. Okay. So just setting the context then, social media has really impacted how we go about our lives, how we go about our business, how we go about our work, and often you hear of this term, like, I don't know if it's the same there, but like you hear digital transformation, and it's often associated with like the corporate, with the commercial world, but the youth sector are undergoing their own digital transformation, and often it can be difficult to try and keep up with the speed of change and making sure that we're on top of the latest trends and the latest platforms. And I myself have been working in this space for a few years now. And, over that time, I've seen how organizations and youth organizations have been trying to adapt to social media and the new digital world that we live in. And it has been to kind of like varying kind of like degrees. But I think what we have seen over the last few months with the outbreak of the global pandemic is that, suddenly we no longer have an option. We need to be using social media, and we need to be using digital platforms to be able to get our message out there and to really like engage those audiences. So whereas in the past it might have been, will we do this or won't we do this, or to what degree, whereas now we don't have the choice. We just need to go there and embrace social media as part of our work. Stop fighting the future, but just jump right in. So I also thought it would be useful to do this at the outset, because I do think it helps to guide our thinking for the rest of the session as well. So what I have here is what I kind of call a social media assessment. But what I've done is broken down, let's say, the social media journey for you, for your organization, into 4 different stages. And we'll go through each of those stages individually. But you might then just think about, where might we be along that journey? So very much kind of with that, analyzing our current performance, see how we're using social media, but then also to identify where you want to get to. So you might think, okay, I'm around here in the journey, but that's where I want to get to. And then it helps, to guide that. So the first stage in that journey is the crawl stage. So that this is really where, there's not a lot of activity on your social media. It's very inconsistent. It's kind of like, oh, we did that event yesterday. Did we put something up on social media about that? Where there's no real plan or strategy behind it. And the role maybe is not supported within the organization. Next stage in the journey then, so you might be walking along where you do have some outlined objectives. What you want to achieve with your social media. It may be part of somebody's job within your organization on top of other things, which is often the case. But often, you might not be measuring your analytics. So being able to see what content, what posts on social media are performing well and getting good engagements, likes, shares, comments, and learning from that. I think social media gives us a huge amount of data and information that we can learn from to help guide our future work on social media when we're engaging in storytelling and trying to have impact with our social media work. But again, this might lack a certain amount of resources. So you don't have the time, you don't have the personnel or the budget to kind of spend on your social media. So the third stage in the process then is where, you have consistent output across different social media platforms. You know what audiences you are trying to target and to engage. You have different kind of content on different platforms. So you feel like, as an organization, you're putting all of this effort and work into your social media, but maybe you're finding that it's lacking a certain amount of engagement. So you're putting all this work in, but you're not necessarily getting the return from that. Or then the final stage in the journey then is what I call the fly stage. So you're flying along, you have a digital or a social media strategy in place for your organization. Your content does get strong engagement. So again, engagements, I mean like those likes, comments, shares, retweets, all of those kind of metrics. It is somebody's dedicated role within the organization. they have the resources in order to be able to spend time, really working at social media. And then often the gold standard, I find, for a lot of this work, and especially within kind of like youth organizations as well, is when we have ambassadors on social media who are sending our messages to their own networks through their social media platforms as well. So having ambassadors and advocates on social media who's working on it on our behalf. Okay, so just wanted to outline that. Maybe, hopefully you can identify, okay, I don't necessarily fall within the crawl stage. I'm between crawl and walk, or I'm between run and fly. But hopefully what it does is helps to get us thinking, okay, well, if we want to get further in the journey, here's kind of what we need to do. And then hopefully during the rest of the session, we'll identify ways of doing that. So I also wanted to reference this survey that comes out every year. It's the Global NGO Technology Report. So the latest results I have are from 2019. But so it's a global report, but they break it down by region as well. So we can see there that 754 non-profit organizations from 34 countries across Europe took part in this survey. And you can see there a breakdown of the top 10 causes that those organizations are working on, and children and youth coming out there on top. And also the types of organizations they are, so whether they are a non-profit organization, a charity, or so on. So when it comes to their use of social media, we can see here 95% of those, 754, so 95% of those regularly use social media to engage their supporters and their donors. And you can see kind of like a breakdown of what social media platforms they are using there. So Facebook on top, then Twitter, Instagram, and the different features that they are using on those social media platforms. Okay, but if we actually break it down a little bit further, so 95% is quite high. 95% are active and present on social media. But if we break it down, only 44%, so less than half, have a written social media strategy. 46% use an editorial calendar or a content calendar for their social media campaigns. So again, like those two things would suggest to me that those, over half of those respondents are not effectively doing that social media planning that I touched on at the start. So 27% have a system in place to track and report return on investment. So again, that's that measurement piece. So, how are we performing on social media? What content is working and engaging audiences? 84% say that the board helps there. That's not as relevant. But then there's some positive results there as well. So there's a vast majority agree that it's effective for online brand awareness, for creating social change, for online fundraising, recruiting volunteers, recruiting event attendees, and inspiring people to take action as well, which I think is important, And so all of those things, so online fundraising, recruiting volunteers, recruiting event attendees, they're different actions. And I think where social media is when done properly, can be very effective in kind of driving that action. So, you don't just want kind of like, say, a presence on social media, but you want to be using it in a way that helps you to meet your objectives, whether that be fundraising or recruiting volunteers or recruiting event attendees. That's where you're kind of going to have that impact. But so what's required for that then is, what I call the 3 R's. I think first of all, at the outset, we need to have recognition. So we need to be able to recognize that these social media is an important tool now, for any organization. in order to be able to bring in new audiences. And I think like especially so for youth organizations as well, because we all know that younger audiences are more digitally native, and this is where they are most this is where they are most active. So it's about being where your audiences are, but also for reaching other kind of important stakeholders and funders and all of that, they're also active on social media. So it's about telling your story in the best way on those platforms in order to have impact. So at the outset, having that recognition, really, really important. But then equally, if not more important, is being able to allocate the adequate resources behind that, so making sure that it is somebody's kind of like role and they're supported in that role. They can dedicate that time and energy, and maybe perhaps some budget as well for creating content, for doing social media advertising. So being able to put the resources behind it. And I really do believe that if you have that recognition, you can put those resources into it, well, then you will realize all of the benefits and the opportunities and the impact that social media as a tool can have for your organization and the important work that you're all doing within your organization. Okay, so into the kind of the crux of this part of the session then was, okay, well, how do we go about and do that? So I have these kind of like 7 steps for, telling your story, creating impact, but this is very much about that planning piece, so 7 steps for creating a social media plan that will help us to really get the most out of these platforms. So we'll go through each of those 7 steps now in a little bit more detail. So first of all, at the outset, really important that you're very clear on what your aims and your objectives are, and this is concretely writing them down. So it might be broader than just like social media. So, you might have an organizational strategy, a communication strategy, or, you just know that, okay, well, over the next 6 months, we want to achieve X, Y, and Z, so then you're thinking, okay, well, if that's the case, how can we use social media to help us to deliver X, Y, and Z? So that might be recruiting volunteers, getting people to sign up for Zoom webinars, so just concretely trying to identify those actions over the next 6 months, for example. Okay, and as that, because I think that really helps to inform the rest of this process. So after you've done that, then it's thinking about, well, who are your target audiences? Who are we trying to reach and engage and influence? And being kind of as clear on these as well. So I imagine for a lot of people on this Zoom call today, that would be kind of like young people. So, even within that, young people, what age ranges, where are they living, as much kind of like detail, demographic detail, and what are they interested in, kind of creating personas for the target audiences that we are trying to engage. Again, because that will help us when it comes to kind of creating content or what platforms we need to be active on. Similarly, you might be trying to target funders, other organizations in the sector, other partner organizations from different European countries, those kinds. So just trying to think about who they are, but also prioritizing them as well. So, our number 1 target audience is kind of like young people or parents, other organizations in the sector, but making sure that you're clear on who they are and ranking them in order of kind of like, importance. Because when it comes to resources, then, well, we want to try and allocate as much resources behind our priority audiences as well, rather than spreading ourselves too thinly, trying to reach everyone without being a little bit more kind of selective and strategic about that. So then we're into what are we going to say? And this is all about framing and messaging. And especially when we're talking about storytelling, this is really, really important. So what the model that I try and follow for this, and and this goes for creating content, creating messages for our social media posts. What we're trying to do is, like, first of all, articulate the issues that we're working on in the most authentic and compelling way. We're trying to appeal to people's values, so even if people are not directly impacted or affected by the work that you're doing, they still feel they still can see the value in the work, and they can still see the impact of the work that you're doing. Then you're also showing people, like, what needs to be done in order to kind of, improve conditions in the sector, or, what work are your organizations doing? And then how can people help to do that? So be that, sign up to volunteer or sign up to attend a Zoom webinar. So that's kind of the model. So articulating the issue in an authentic and compelling way, appealing to people's values, demonstrating the work that you're doing, and then how people can help to do that. Okay? And I think that helps us then, feeds into, I think, which is probably one question that a lot of people have is, well, what social media platforms should we be using for this, And often I get asked the question, so what's the next new platform now? Where are all the young people at? And is it TikTok? And what's happened to Snapchat? And, and it's a very, very valid question, but often my response is just to ask kind of people in organizations, well, what social media platforms are you currently using? And is that where your target audiences are active? And are you getting the most out of those platforms? So you might say, oh yeah, we're on Instagram, but should we be moving to TikTok? And I would say, like, maybe focus on Instagram first, and be confident that you're doing that well first, before you again spread your resources more thinly by trying to adapt and maintain an active presence on another platform. Okay, so it's all about being sure that you're active on the right platforms related to your target audiences, and that you're not kind of trying to be active on them all if it's not as relevant. So young people, yeah, they're definitely most active on Instagram, and we are seeing kind of like a real surge in activity on TikTok as well. But, if you're trying to tell your story and demonstrate impact amongst other stakeholders, like local media, elected representatives, other organizations in the sector, well, then they're most active on Twitter. So, you probably will need to be active in that space there in order to reach those. But then if it's kind of like parents, well, then maybe Facebook, that's where they're active. The young people, not so active on Facebook anymore, but their parents and probably their grandparents are there as well. So that's what I mean, just thinking, well, where does it make most sense for us to be? And then into, so your content strategy. And this is why, all of the previous steps are important. So when it comes to our content strategy, we have to be thinking, well, what are our aims and objectives? What are we trying to achieve? Who are we trying to reach? And where are we going to reach them? So if it is kind of like, results of a survey or research that you've done, well then, you might make an infographic with some of like the key findings from that. So that's probably like your key piece of content, but you might be hosting a webinar where you're discussing the findings from that research. And so that will be the link that's in the post. and then you're going to put that out on Twitter for all of the other organizations to see the impact of your work, and also to sign up where they can find out more information. Okay, so you see the kind of the relationship between, hopefully you can see the relationship between the different stages in the plan. And then, so engaging your audiences, yeah, so that's just making sure that you are including calls to action in your social media posts as much as you can. And those calls to action, again, need to be linked back to where possible, back to your aims and your objectives. So, you know, you put out an infographic or a video on social media, what's the call to action? You know, so it might be visit our website to find out more information, sign up to our mailing list here. If you'd like to get involved with the organization, click here. You know, so being very explicit in what you want people to do and how they go and do that. Okay, so what is that action? And making sure we include that as much as we can. And then also, yeah, so what does success look like? I've touched on this, but one of the best things about social media is the ability to measure everything that you're doing. So for example, if you take out an ad in a local newspaper, you don't necessarily know how many people have seen that ad. But if you put up a video on Facebook, for example, you will know how many people that video reached, how long they watched the video for before they started to drop off, you know, how many times it was shared. So you get all of this data, all of this information that can help you when you're thinking about future content and future videos and future infographics. You know, so what are your audiences engaging with? You know, and do more of that. And similarly, what are they not engaging with? And doing maybe less of that, or tweaking that to try and increase that engagement. Okay, so at that stage now, I'm just going to take any questions that we might have at this stage. And I know that we're just looking at the time there as well. But Moita, if there's any questions, take them now.
Yeah, no, right now we don't have no questions yet.
Okay.
I have a few already, but I'm asking, is anybody from the audience who would like to put a questions? I can also wait until the end, of course. Anybody else at this moment?
I might suggest just if there are no questions at the moment, I might just keep going for now, and then, you know, we will have probably a good 10 minutes then at the end for questions.
I think that's a great idea, so let's just continue. Thank you.
Okay. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about Yes Equality, the marriage equality referendum in Ireland, and hopefully what this part of the session will do is illustrate much of that plan that I just discussed there. You know, so yeah, we were trying to build a very positive campaign that people wanted to be a part of. We had two very clear target audiences. One was people who we knew who were very active supporters, and we wanted to really mobilize and motivate them to become part of the campaign. But then, you know, we had about 60% of Irish people who were in like the movable middle. So they were maybe like soft yeses or soft nos. And our goal really was to try and educate, inform, engage those people and bring them over to the yes side, because they were going to decide the outcome of the vote. So they were our two kind of like key target audiences. And let me just say that storytelling was the backbone of this campaign, you know. So it was all about trying to create that space for people to tell their stories, you know, about why it was important to vote yes on the 22nd of May. So how do we go about and do that then? You know, it was all about kind of like that framing, and the values piece, so important. So, you know, we were saying to people, you know, as Irish people, you know, we are loving, we are equal, we're fair, generous and inclusive, you know, and the fair, the generous thing to do is to vote yes on the 22nd of May. And ensuring that there was like a really positive tone throughout, you know, because one of the negative, probably the biggest negative side of social media is that it can be quite negative at times. It can be very divisive at times, so we were trying to ensure that there was as much of a positive conversation and a positive tone throughout. And then the messaging to deliver that and the messengers to deliver that was really, really important. So just some of the types of content we used to get those messages across. So, there's a lot of like high profile people in Ireland, very, very well respected, and they would be taking part in kind of radio interviews, and they would be asked, oh, how are you voting in the referendum? And then whenever people would come out positively and say they were voting yes, we would kind of use those quotes, pop them on images like you see here, and share them out on social media. And this type of content actually was some of the best performing content across the course of the campaign. So on the left here, we have Daniel O'Donnell, who is a really famous country and Western singer from like the west of Ireland. And he is like loved and adored by middle-aged and older women right across the country. So he is going to speak to those audiences in ways that we were never going to, And then on the right, that's Mary McAleese, who is a former president of Ireland and is very much kind of respected and loved. And again, this type of content just had such kind of impact and traveled so far on social media for us. But then it's also not all about, the high profile and celebrity people, but it's about everyday people in their communities, talking to people like them as well. And so we have an example here of Bridget and Paddy, and they made a video which they uploaded to YouTube with the help of their son. And it's a video of them on their couch in County Louth in Ireland. And they're just talking about the love that they have experienced over, the 50 years of their marriage. And they want their son to have the same opportunity to experience the love and the happiness that they have. They talked about, being Catholics, but they know that their ever-loving God knows that this is the right thing to do. And, just hitting on so many important messages. So, and this had such impact for the campaign. I can't tell you, like it literally went viral. So, when I was thinking of the title for this, this session, it was like storytelling for impact. And I just thought like this video of Bridget and Paddy was above and beyond the best example of storytelling for impact during that campaign for us as well. Another video that was done by a group of students from Trinity College Dublin, which is called Ring Your Granny, again was super impactful and really capture the imagination of the nation as well. So what it was is like, so there was a perception that older people were maybe more likely to vote no. So these students made a video of them calling up their grandparents and asking them how they were going to vote in the referendum. And it's really lovely because the students are all really nervous and they're like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go. But then they make the phone call and all of their loved ones are like, of course we're voting yes, this is for you, this is for future generations. And again, just I think a really excellent example of storytelling for impact. So also, I just wanted to reference this one as well. What I might do is just throw the link to this video in the chat box and you can maybe just watch it later. But this was a video that came out from Belong To, which is like the national LGBT youth organization in Ireland. And this is all about kind of like young people being change makers, and bringing your family with you. So, it's all about having those conversations and kind of bringing your family along about why this is an important issue and why, you're voting yes. And the videos then is like all of these families coming together to go and vote yes on the day of the referendum. And it's a really, really lovely video. But I'm conscious of time. So what I'll do is I'll just pop the link into the chat box at the end, and you can have a look at that. So other types of content then that worked really well and were related to kind of like our aims and our objectives, like I discussed during those kind of like 7 steps. So one key objective for us was getting as many people added to the register as possible, you know, because we knew that younger people were our biggest supporters, but maybe they were less likely to be registered to vote. You know, so we were running register to vote campaigns and trying to like drive people to do that. And that was the action. So then, you know, we created this type of content and these graphics, you know, to try and reach and engage those audiences and let them know, here's how you go about and take this action and register to vote. So in Ireland, the process for registering to vote is not the easiest. It's a little bit complicated, but we were trying to present it as, you know, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, even though there's probably about 8 steps in that graphic. And I think what's good about this is that, you know, it's informative, it's engaging, it's shareable. So if I see this on social media, but I'm already registered to vote, you know, so it's not directly relevant to me because I'm on the register, but there might be lots of people on my social media who are not registered to vote. So I'm going to share this on my profiles to make sure that anyone who's not gets to see this as well, you know. And then also we were trying to very much create a sense of urgency as well. There was a perception that because younger people were so supportive, they were perhaps less likely to actually go out and vote on the day, and you know, and again wouldn't have a great track record in actually going to vote. So we were trying to say to them, like, look, you know, every single vote is important. We need to get out there and do this. And this type of content, again, got lots of engagement and was spread far and wide on social media. So I mentioned at the outset how, you know, when it does come to this, and I'm sure all of you are aware that social media is very visual, you know, and often it is difficult to be kind of creating this type of content. But I just wanted to stress that, like, it is becoming a lot easier. And there are a lot more tools available now, you know, either free or low cost tools that allow us to create some of this kind of content. So just one that I wanted to share. Now, some of you might be aware of this already, but it's called Canva. Canva, okay? And basically what it is, it's like a graphic design tool for people who are not graphic designers. It's very user-friendly. So there is a free and a premium paid version. But to say as well that Canva offer the paid version for free to registered nonprofits. So if that is of interest and relevant to you, just put into Google Canva for nonprofits, and they have a form that you fill out. It's not too difficult, and there's usually a very quick turnaround time, and they will give you free access to the premium version. But what's great about Canva is that it already has everything kind of sized for you in the templates that you might need. So if you're looking for something for a Facebook event cover, you just come in here, type in Facebook, oh, here we go, Facebook event cover. So it's already sized the correct dimensions that I need. And so they have lots of templates here that you can choose from. Or you can just start with a blank canvas, and you know, you can upload your own logo, you can use your own kind of like colors, and then there's lots of different icons that you can use. There's lots of stock imagery as well that you can use, and it is very easy to use as well. So, if you are looking for a tool, just to kind of get going and creating some of this content, I think Canva is a really, really good place to start. Okay. But there are others that are out there as well for like video and things. So this is actually my own website. I'm not just plugging my own website, but much of what we've discussed is in here as well. But there is a resources section where you'll find more of these kind of like tools to help us create content as well. So if you want to check out others, there are some there also. Okay. And then I think with that, we'll probably go to the Q&A. I'm just conscious that I wanted to leave some time to answer any questions that people have. So Moita, if that suits, if there's any questions.
Hi, we don't yet have questions, so I would really encourage participants to put some questions. But actually, a few questions pop up my mind already.
Yeah.
Can maybe I start?
Yes,
Or maybe in between we get some other questions. So firstly, I would commend this Canva. I really like Canva. I use it only once and I didn't register as an NGO. So I find it was really nice, really different than I use it for presentations in the past, for one presentation. But then I found I have to pay every single picture that I put in. And I'm not sure, maybe this is not happening. If I enter with the NGO organizational mail and I have free account, probably this was just the issue that I was not registered. It's kind of particular question.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no. So if you register, as a nonprofit, that won't be the case. You will have free access.
Yeah.
But so like just in here, for example, like you can still use I still find the free version is good, but it can also be limited. So if we're in here, like in the photo section, say I'm just going to put in there. See in this, there's this little button here, like filter, where so I can only search for free ones and then apply that filter. So these, I don't have to pay for any of these.
Yeah. I haven't done that. Yes.
And the same goes for the elements as well.
Yeah.
We'll just put in kind of like youth there. And again, so just so you won't be seeing all of the pro ones, I just want to see all the ones I can use for free.
Amazing. I really loved this Canva it was for different purpose. Okay, we have 2 questions already. Oh, Petya, are you talking about Canva, I think, right? I had a problem registering as an NGO. There is no definition. What do you need to add to proof as documentation for Slovenia? I haven't tried that yet. Probably, Craig, you also can't tell because it's specifically.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I don't know the answer to that question specifically. What you might need in Slovenia for that. Yeah, no, just maybe just kind of like worth checking out, maybe, and then sending a note to all the participants on the call later. For those who want to register, here's what you need to do. Or I would just recommend, Googling Canva for nonprofits, and they should tell you there what you will need in order to be able to register.
Yes, maybe try also sometimes on this platform is useful to contact and they give you answer. This is also my experience with some other platforms. Another question, could you perhaps share some examples of content that didn't work well in the campaign and where could be the reasons for that? So some examples of non-successful content.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good question. And this really kind of like differs, but I found, so if I just draw on the Yes Equality campaign, for example, we found that sharing like media articles, so sharing links to articles on Facebook, for example, didn't perform as well as our more kind of like those graphics that I showed or our video content. The videos, and this is kind of like generally speaking as well, videos perform the best, then followed by kind of like photos, graphics, infographics, and then it'd probably be like links to articles then, and then underneath that, just text only. So it's the more visual, engaging content tends to work best. But I found, just from my experience, that sometimes you will see a lot of posting of articles, and sometimes it doesn't work as well.
Nice. Thank you for answer. We have some more. So how frequently should we post on social media?
That's a good question, and I think I have that actually here. And again, like this, it should be kind of like specific to your own organization, right? So based on like the resources that you currently have and how much content you have to work with, so if you're at a stage now where you're posting twice a week to Facebook, well, there's no point in saying, okay, well, we're going to up that to 7 or 8 over the next kind of, month. You need to be kind of setting yourself kind of like realistic kind of goals and targets based on how you're currently performing. But so there's just kind of like some stats here. This is also from that global NGO technology report, which I referenced at the start. So those who responded, 18% post twice a day or more on Facebook, which I would say is a lot. A quarter post once a day, which that would probably be average, is like 1 a day. 23% every other day, 90% once a week. And you can see there the same kind of like breakdown. But generally speaking, I think like if you're even able to aim for between 3 to 5 a week on Facebook and on Instagram, no more really than 1 a day unless necessary, because you're trying to play to the algorithms on those platforms as well. Whereas on Twitter, you can post as many kind of tweets a day as you want, because as a platform, it's a lot more instant, and the algorithm doesn't impact the same way as it does on the others.
Thank you very much. We have some new questions coming. So the next one would be, how would you lead a group to set aims and objectives of a campaign? It's quite big questions, I think, but maybe shortly.
How would you lead a group to come up with the aims and objectives?
Yes.
So I think the best way to approach that is to, try and align it with, your overall organizational objectives and strategy. So then over the next kind of like 6 months, well, we know in September we're releasing this report. In October we have like this event. We're trying to recruit new volunteers, and then so bringing the different people from the different teams within your organizations together to identify all of those priorities over the next kind of like, I keep saying 6 months, but whatever time period that you want to kind of focus on, and then just trying to list the objectives out of that. So, okay, well, between now and the end of the year, we want to increase the number of volunteers by 10%. We want to, increase traffic to our website by X%. And, so those kind of setting those aims and objectives in a way that is going to support the overall organization.
Thank you very much for answer. We have more questions. So the next one, are there some free or affordable options for scheduling posts on different platforms? Craig can point out. I would add up to this question also, are there some tools that you can schedule up posts on several platforms at the same time if you choose to post the same content? So this,
Good question. So generally, I don't really advocate for those tools that you schedule for all platforms, because the message kind of needs to be tweaked. And sometimes it can just look a little bit messy. But the best tool that I do have for that is Content Cal. This one here. So the URL is contentcal.io. I'll actually put the link in to the chat box here.
Yes, please.
So that's really good for like scheduling content for all platforms, and there is a free version of that. But then outside of that, I tend myself to use the platforms themselves for scheduling. So now, because Facebook own Instagram, okay? So, and they have this new kind of platform called Facebook Creator Studio, where you can schedule posts to go out on Facebook and Instagram from that platform. So Facebook Creator Studio is good for the two of them. People also use Later for Instagram. And then for Twitter, you can actually now schedule tweets directly from Twitter itself. So in here, you compose your tweet. You'll see there's this icon here with the calendar and the clock. So you can select that and you can choose what time and date you want that to go out. Okay, so what I do personally and what I try and kind of advocate for is using the platform's own tools to do so.
Nice. Thank you very much for the questions, for the answers. There are still questions coming up, so maybe I will start to be a bit choosy. So I'm reading this one. Do you have any tips on how to dedicate one person on social media duty? NGOs are often very limited on personnel. And likewise, we find it difficult to invest finances into promotions when most of our programs are free for our participants. Any suggestions on keeping it free on low budget? So how to actually, yes.
Yeah, no, and like, because a lot of the work I do is in this space, that is often kind of the most common challenge that I hear is in terms of resources, both from a staff perspective and in terms of kind of like budget as well. But in terms of the staff and in terms of kind of like resources more generally, I think it really comes down to planning. So if you are able to kind of allocate one, maybe two staff people to look after the social media, and then if they can do it effectively, it takes out a lot of the resourcing that is required. So for example, if you're very clear on what your aims and your objectives are, and you have all of the content to help to support that, it's about taking an hour, 2 hours on a Monday and sitting down and scheduling the content to go out across the week. So, this week our focus is to try and drive attendees for this webinar series that we're hosting. So on, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever, you're scheduling posts with the content and the messages to go out to help support that. So therefore, if you don't have time for the rest of the week, well, okay, well, that stuff is scheduled and that will go out on social media for the rest of the week. So that's, because often it's like, I didn't get to that today, or, it's like, what are we going to talk about on social media today? So it's all about just being able to plan properly, spend the time, scheduling, and then it frees up and it's not this kind of constant thing that's kind of weighing on your mind about trying to keep it active and updated. So just being a lot more kind of focused, and then using those kind of like free or low cost tools to create content as well, and encouraging any networks that you have to share the content organically as well, if you don't have kind of like that budget for paid promotion.
Thank you for the answer. I have some more interesting questions, one regarding strategy. So do you suggest to do strategy for every area of our work, to have an umbrella strategy for the organizations, and then make a strategy for each campaign or each project? So how to kind of tackle these issues?
Yeah, so you might have an overall kind of like strategy that guides you along, but then it's coming up to kind of October, November time. You have a key campaign related to something that you're working on. So you might need to look at your main strategy and how does that need to be kind of like tweaked or developed for the campaign. you know, or for the campaign, what kind of specific content do you need? What kind of targets and goals do you have? Are the target audiences the same? So, you know, you'll have your overarching one, but then you might, when it comes to key campaigns like that, you might just need to revise it and make sure that the two are aligned.
Nice, thank you very much. Questions are coming. I would just put one more, a lot of very interesting questions. There is one, we are advertising workshops for youth. How can we attract more? And I would attach to this question a little sub-question, and that would be, what do you think about these paid possibilities? Because we know that some platforms like Facebook and Google offer these paid options. Is it okay? Is it not? So if you can kind of...
Yeah. So where you do have the budget, like I think social media advertising can be very effective for, you know, a couple of reasons. One, well, first of all, it is a lot more difficult to reach kind of like, you know, your target audiences organically on social media, because that's their business model now. They want you to spend more money in order to reach more people. But with that being said, where I do find it's useful is that you don't need to spend a huge amount of money in order to actually have good impact and get good return. So for small amounts, if you have a small amount of money, like €100, and you're very clear on your defined audience, like we want to reach, you know, men and women, are like, you know, age between 15 and 20, living in this area, this area, this area. You know, if you can like really be defined with that, and Facebook will then say, well, okay, well, based on your budget and your target audience, this is approximately the amount of people that you will reach and the amount of results that you will get kind of like from this, you know. And from my experience, you know, it is quite effective in delivering results. But what I would suggest is that you are selective and kind of like strategic in your use of social media advertising. So yeah, so it might be around like recruiting kind of like attendees or recruiting volunteers, or, you know, say you kind of put some resources into creating this really nice video. Well, then, you know, where social media advertising can be useful is it helps to give the content an initial boost, an initial lift up into people's feeds, and that's where then organic activity can take over and it can get shared, but you're kind of given a little bit of a boost at the outset. So I do think it can be effective when used in the right way.
Thank you. I have one more follow-up questions and a question, and then I suggest we stop the questions and kind of move towards the end. So it's a follow-up questions to these platforms, that these tools that enable us to put content on different medias, social media. So you mentioned it's not advisable to put the same content on over different social media platforms. But then, is there any specific guidelines or any specific tools that would help adaptation of the post within different platforms? So if I have like some message I want to communicate, but I would just need to change it a little bit between the platforms, can you do this in tool, or is there any other suggestions that...
When it comes to kind of like the text and the message, you kind of you'll just need to kind of do that yourself, you know what I mean? So like how you speak to other organizations might be different to how you speak to young people, for example. So that's the kind of work that you'll need to do. But then in Canva, you can actually like resize kind of graphics for depending on where you need them. So say you have, this is for Twitter, but then you want it to be kind of square format for Instagram. So you come in here and you can press resize, and then I just type in here Instagram. So that's what I wanted for here. And then I click resize, and then it does it like that for me here. Okay, so that I think that's really useful, but like the kind of the messaging and the text, that's more manual.
That's more manual. Thank you very much. I think we answer a lot of questions. If there is something really hot that somebody would need to have it answered, please send it now. But otherwise, we will stop the questions, and we will thank you, Craig, very much for this lecture. It was amazing. It was a lot of practical tips that I think we are all missing.
Thank
So
you very
yes, that would be. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for lecture. I would also like to thank all the participants to joining us. I hope you enjoyed the lecture as I did, and see you on our next activity. Is there anything more from you, Craig, you would like to say?
No, just to say thank you again to everyone who joined for your participation and for the invitation to be with you today. Really, really enjoyed it. And I might see you in person at some time in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all the participants, and have a nice afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.